The goal of our meeting is fundamentally that you will get to know yourself better. It is a self-examination. If you come to our meeting with this idea of getting to know yourself better, getting to know better your biological temperament, better know where you stand in terms of education of character, if you begin to understand what are the real challenges for your life in terms of virtues, character, and virtuous leadership in general, then things are okay. Another thing that you will have to do during those days is to think about building this virtuous leadership environment we are going to speak a lot about. A virtuous leadership environment is an environment for your life. It's a real plan of life. It's about the things that you will do after we meet. What is interesting is not what's going to happen during our 4 days meeting here. What is more interesting is to know what's going to happen after. And this meeting here with you is just the beginning. It's just the idea is to give you some ideas, to higher the level of your motivation and to show you the direction that you can follow if you want to practice virtuous leadership in the future. So these are the things in the end of the day that I propose you to do during our meeting. To keep in mind, I am here to get to know myself better, to get to know what are the gifts that God has given to me, biological gifts, spiritual gifts, cultural gifts, whatever it is. And secondly, to set certain goals that I can achieve, that I need to achieve. And third, begin building this plan that you will have to live out during your life after our meeting here these days. Two things in the end of the day. One is, I want you to develop your contemplative spirit, because in order to have a desire for virtuous leadership, or I would say in order to practice virtuous leadership, we need to have a very strong desire for it. We need to contemplate the beauty of the virtue, and we need to have a desire to acquire and develop the virtue for ourselves. And this is a contemplative part of it. Without that, there is no progress. As the beginning of everything is how much we see the beauty in everything, how much we see the beauty in those virtues we are going to speak about, and how much we want those virtues for ourselves, for our life. I insist very much on this aspect of it, because if the heart is not engaged in this process, the will and the intellect will not follow, or they may follow just for a while. And you will, in the end of the day, you will collapse in your quest for leadership. Your heart has to have a very strong desire for those things we're going to speak about. And I want you to put the emphasis on the beauty of those things we are going to speak about, because in the end of the day, we are going to speak about God, who is truth, beauty, and goodness. And the virtues are only a participation of God's truth, beauty, and goodness. So hearing those leadership stories, contemplating the virtues, the basic virtues, the crowning virtues of leadership, you'll see something that is very beautiful. Because that thing that is beautiful and what you will see, it's not just the virtue itself. It is, in the end of the day, the face of God that is hidden behind those things. We are not speaking about just leadership. We're speaking about virtuous leadership, which is for us Christian the only possible leadership, the unique leadership that we have to practice. So if you have this motivation, everything will be all right. Will be all right. Contemplation and action. So the contemplation of the beauty, of the goodness, of the truth, of the things we're speaking about, and action, which is You need to dream about the things that you can do. You need to think about transforming your dreams into visions and visions into missions. So every time you hear about virtue, virtuous leadership story, you need to think about, and how does this apply to your personal life? What are the things that you're called to do? In virtuous leadership, there are two words that are difficult, that with certain difficulty come together. It's contemplation and action. Some of you are more capable of contemplation because of their biological structure, which we call temperament. Melancholy people are very oriented towards contemplation, biologically speaking. Cholerics is the opposite, are directed towards action. We'll speak about all those things, but you are different people in this room, and you have to know that some of you have a natural biological tendency towards easy contemplation, and others have a natural tendency towards easy action. So if you know those things already now, just thinking a little bit about yourself, if you're more of a choleric or a melancholy, you have to think, okay, what's the challenge for me? The challenge is going to be contemplation, if we were speaking about. This is the challenge for the cholerics. The challenge is going to be for me to find the practical implications in action of what we're speaking about. That would be for the melancholies. You follow me? These are basic things I tell you already now, because I know that from the very beginning it's important to have it clear, although we're going to speak a lot about those things, interactions between biology and spirit in leadership. It's okay? Do you hear me well? Yeah. I don't speak at a loud voice because I don't have a loud voice. It's so simple. Maybe because I've been smoking too much during my life. But I don't smoke much. I smoke 2 or 3 cigarettes per day, so it's not a crime. I drink some vodka from time to time. In Moscow with friends, good also, but I'm not a drunk. So when I begin, how do we begin with? I want to begin the American way, because we are here in America, not in Paris. The French way is we begin with ideas. And after we tell people, now apply those ideas to your life. This is the process of educating people from up down. You come with ideas, ideologies, and you tell people, follow the rules. In America, you're more pragmatic people. You're used to think down, up. When we tell stories, and then after that we try to think. What is it that we have told? What is this about? So we are going to begin the American way, and I like to do this because it's very practical, it's active. Tell a few leadership stories of people you've heard about, or people you've never heard about. But I think you've heard about those people because many of you here are in business. The first story I like to tell is a story of a French man. Not because he's French, but because I met him personally, so I know who he was really. I'm sure all of you heard about the company Michelin. This is the number one in the tire industry in the world. Because I write on virtuous leadership, I need to meet people who practice what I speak about. And I need to confront my system with their experience as business people. And I spend my time looking for those people. And when I have a chance, I call them and I have a meeting with them and I spend a good time with them. So about 10 years ago, I met François Michelin. You see his picture here. François was the CEO of the Michelin Group during 45 years. He died. He just passed away last year in December. He was 90 years old. When I met him, he was 80. And I met him in the headquarters of Michelin in central France, in a little city called Clermont-Ferrand. It's the headquarters of the company since the very beginning, since the end of the 19th century. François was not anymore the CEO of the company. Of course, he was 80 years old when I met him, but he was still there working and helping the board to make the right decisions. And he received me, and we had 3 hours of discussion on my books, because he received a copy of my first book, Virtuous Leadership. I guess you have it on your table. And then after he read it, he wrote to me a nice letter, and it was easy for me to meet him. And I told him I was writing a second book called Created for Greatness, The Power of Magnanimity, and I would like to hear from him some advices. And then he received me, and we have a very nice discussion during 3 hours. François Michelin, an incredible man, kind of phlegmatic personality, a great businessman, very rational, very deep, and at the same time, a great personality. So I spent with him 3 hours, and then I began. The first thing he asked him was, Monsieur François, everybody knows in the world, at least in France, that Michelin has a very specific corporate culture, which is very attractive for some people and not so attractive for other people. I will speak after why it's so attractive for certain people. I would like to know, how did you build that corporate culture that is so specific to the Michelin Group? Because I have the intuition that many of the values that have been put into practice in your companies have to do with my system, Virtuous Leadership System. And François told me, Alex, I need to tell you not my personal story. I need to tell you the story of my grandfather. Because my grandfather was the founder of the group Michelin. My grandfather was a great man. I knew him well. He's the one who brought the spirit and the culture to our company. And he began to talk about his grandfather. He told me the life of his grandfather, Edouard. Edouard was an engineer and a businessman who, in the end of the 19th century, created the Michelin Company, and they began to produce tires. And one day a man called Marius Mignol, the one you see also on the picture, came, and he knocked at the door of the company. He spoke with the chief of staff. He said to the chief of staff that he would like very much to work for Michelin because he loved tires. He had a passion for tires. So the chief of staff, of course, met the natural questions. Mr. Marius, do you have a degree? First usual question from human resources people. Do you have a degree? Well, Marius had no degree, so he said clearly, look, I have no degree. I left school when I was 15 for family reasons, so I've not even finished school. So don't ask me about university degrees. But I have been working in a printing department of a company not very far from here, and I can tell you that I know about printing. I know about layout, typing, printing, making newspapers for the company. And I know that you have a newspaper here. So the chief of staff liked Marius. He liked him. And where did he send him? Well, to the printing department. It's obvious, because Marius has an experience. in printing departments. So he sent him to the printing department of the group Michelin. So we have Marius printing, doing stuff there. But a few days later, Edouard, the CEO of the company, heard about that story. That there was a guy called Marius who came, who loves tires, but unfortunately has no education, at least superior education, and we sent him to the printing department. So Edouard was very upset with that. He thought it was not rational. It was a very bad idea to send someone whom we don't know to the printing department, a place where there is nothing very creative, let's say, creative to be done. So he called the chief of staff and he told him that this was no good. This was no good. This was not a right decision from his part. He was very upset and he pronounced those beautiful words that entered history, that have a lot to do with leadership. We will mention those words quite often. He said to the chief of staff, "Remember always, you need to break the stone in order to discover the diamond that is hidden inside. Break Marius. Send him to the International Commercial Department. Ask him to buy and sell stuff for the tires on the international markets. Then, in a few months, we will discover who is Marius Miniol. But don't tell me now that you know Marius Miniol, because he probably himself doesn't know who he is. Break the stone in order to discover the diamond that is hidden inside." In those words, you have, of course, something very Christian here. You feel, what do you feel? First, you feel this man, Edouard Michelin, had a very deep sense of the human dignity. First thing, deep sense of humanity. There is for him a diamond hidden in each person. Well, this is not something usual. Edouard, remember, he's not only a businessman, he's also an engineer. So he knows about those stuff. He took it in his hands and looked at it and he said, "Well, this guy is a genius. He has nothing to do here. Geniuses don't work in the commercial department. Send him to the research department." So one thing here you discover in this, the personality of this man. After having said that he has a very high vision of the dignity of the human being, he has practical wisdom. He has practical wisdom. He sees on the table of a man without mathematics sense, physics and sciences, a very simple instrument that this guy has created to make life more easy, and he understands immediately that he has in front of him a genius. This is what we call, I will speak about it, the virtue of prudence. Virtue of people who grasp reality almost immediately. It is a virtue. It comes with time, it comes with experience, it comes with the experience of a profound, deep life of contemplation and action. We'll speak more about, of course, the virtue of prudence later on. But he has prudence. He has practical wisdom. And he makes the right decision. He sends Marius to the research department. At that time, this is before the Second World War. At that time, the problem in this sphere of activity is very simple. The cars go faster and faster every day, but the tires are still the traditional tires. And at high speed, the tires warm up so much that it's dangerous for the client. You're not sure you will go home. You're sure you leave the place, but you're not sure you go home, especially if you drive quick. So those who drive fast have problems because they are driving dangerously. Because not of the motors of the car, but because of the tires of the car. These tires are traditional tires. They are the conventional tires. They are the old tires. At a certain speed, they warm up so much and they can explode at any moment. Those engineers who were working for Michelin are the top scientists of the French society. All these guys are the alumni of École Polytechnique in Paris. So top mathematicians, top physicists, these people know what they're speaking about. They know how to make curves. They know about numbers. And they've been during decades trying to understand what's a tire. How does it work? Why these tires are warming up so much? And especially, how do we stop the process of heating of tires at high speed? Decades of work, no results. Decades of curves, decades of mathematics and physics. That was the situation when Marius came in. And Marius, well, no physics, no mathematics, he has passion for the tires. He loves tires. So what is Marius going to do? First, he's not going to interact with these people because they don't speak the same language. That's the first thing. It's not the same milieu. These are very different people. They don't speak the same language, almost different French language. They are very well educated people. Marius had no education. He comes from a very simple family. But his boss told him that he's a genius. And he trusts his boss. So what is he going to do? Well, he's going to observe the tires. He's going to make his own tire, to understand how does it work. He creates a lot of material around the tire just to be capable of observing a tire in action. So observation, a lot of experimentation, observation. And after a few years, during the Second World War, in secrecy because they didn't want to give to the Germans the results of their investigation, Marius invented the Radial Tire that changed all the industry of tires all over the world. The famous Radial Tire was invented during the Second World War in 1941 or 42 by Marius Michelin as a result of understanding what is a tire and what happens at high speed. How do the flows of heat move inside the tires? I am not a specialist of the tires, so I can't explain you too well what happens, but there are many pictures you can find on the internet about what's a radial tire and what's the difference between a radial tire and a conventional tire. It's not important for us. What is important is to understand that Marius made an incredible discovery, that the discovery changed the industry, revolutionized the industry of tires all over the world, not only in France, but also in America, in the whole world. We have radial tires. These are very strong tires, very secure tires, and they last a long time. Marius was aware of one thing. It is that his boss, Edouard, was not only a boss for him. That Edouard Michelin has been for him a father, a teacher, a coach. He has been a leader. He has been the person that gave him the possibility to know himself better, to discover his own talent, to multiply this talent, to put this talent at the service of the company, of the whole country, of the whole world. So Marius was aware that he owed everything to his boss. Marius had parents. But his parents never told him that he was a genius. I am not here to judge the parents of Marius. I'm just telling you that Marius spent 15 years in the house of his parents, and none of his parents was capable of telling him who he was. He spent 2 months in Michelin Company, and after 2 months, he already knew who he was. That's a fact. We're not judging anybody here. We're just telling a story with details and facts. Edouard Michelin has been really a leader for this man. And all his life, Marius will be listening to him and will be grateful to Edouard. Because of Edouard, he found meaning in his work, meaning in his life. From this story, what can we get from it? Well, I've been thinking a lot about this story, of course. And when I saw the love with which Edouard Michelin was speaking about his grandfather Edouard, I also felt the gratitude that this man, François Michelin, had for his grandfather. He felt gratitude. He learned from him so much. He felt gratitude for him. From this story, we learn, in the end of the day, a very simple thing. That simple thing is, what is leadership? That's so simple. But it is that we get a definition of leadership from that story. And I think it is one of the best business case, I would say, business story, in which we have a vision of what is true leadership. Because what is Michelin doing? What has he done with his employee? Well, he has brought out greatness in him. And this is fundamentally what I think leadership is about. Leadership is about achieving greatness by bringing out the greatness in people. What leaders do is they bring out greatness in people. People that would not have been great if they would not have known certain people during their lives. This is what leadership is about. That's why you don't have to be a businessman to be a leader. Your mom, your father, your brother, these people are called to leadership in the very place where they are, as moms and fathers and brothers. Leadership has nothing to do with the position. I don't like the expression leadership position. Why I don't like it? Because it sounds false. These are two things you cannot put together. Leadership is a way of life. It has to do with this very notion that the Romans love so much, auctoritas. Auctoritas is the power that stems from character. To be a boss, a CEO, a project manager, this has little to do with character, with auctoritas. This has to do with another word that is potestas. Potestas in Latin means power, but it is the power that you receive from the position that you have. What's written on your visit card, it's not your auctoritas. It's your potestas. None of you will ever write in his visit card, leader. I'm sure. Why? Because you feel, well, this is a moral statement. You feel ashamed of writing leader in a visit card. You're giving a moral statement about yourself. But you don't feel ashamed of writing CEO, CFO, COO, C2Os for the chemist. Don't feel afraid about those things, because this is a position. And everybody agrees that you have this position because your salary depends from that position very often, unfortunately. Auctoritas is authority that stems from character. Potestas, it's power that stems from the function that you have. The story of Michelin is for me a great story, because then I understand why my mother was a leader for me. Do you understand? This is not a business story. The power of the Michelin story is that it is not a business story. It is a simple story of a person that has really a heart of a leader. And this heart can be the heart of a mother towards his children, father towards his children. It is a vision of what's your life about. It's about serving people with greatness. And every individual on earth is called to this, to achieve greatness by bringing out the greatness in others. This is what your service is about. Your service is not about cleaning the shoes of your children, of your employees. It's not for the general to prepare the breakfast for his offices. I'm not against breakfast, but I know by experience that generals are very bad cookers, and I prefer breakfast prepared by professionals. I'm expecting from a general something else. A magnanimous service, a service that will transform me, that will educate me. Leadership is really about education. When you know the meaning of the word education, you understand it is the same thing as leadership. Education, the English word education comes from the Latin word educare. And the word educare in Latin comes from another Latin word, which is educere. What does educere means in Latin? Educere means to bring out the best in people. This is what education is about. If a university sells you information, this university is not educating you. If a university transforms you, helps you discover your talents, and helps you multiply this talent, then this university is educating you. to instill knowledge in people. It is not to educate. And if to instill knowledge by getting money, this is business. But this is not education. We've misused the word education. It's a beautiful word. That's why people want to use it all the time. But the majority of the educational institutions that I know do not educate. Just sell information. We're not here to enter into details. Why is it like this now? There's a lot of things to speak about because of around this topic. Topic of ideology, topic of subjectivism in philosophy, subjectivism in culture, subjectivism in ethics, subjectivism everywhere. Many people say, why I must educate that person? Why must I show the way? Because there is no objective way. Everything is subjective. So why should I educate? For many people, to educate is to be the dictator. Why should I bring out the best in human beings when I don't even know what the best is? You know what I mean? Well, a lot of people on earth are like this. Alex, why do you want to educate people? Stop educating them. Because by educating them, you're a dictator. You're showing them your way. You try to discover in them what you call the best, but it's your best. Everything is about you. When people think like this, then education is impossible. Then you stop even educating your own children. In the name of respect for the thinking subject that has no human nature. If you deny the idea of human nature, then we are all of us, we are only thinking subjects, and then we have nothing in common. So of course, I must not intervene in your personal life, and you must not intervene in my personal life. So the object, the aim of life is just to respect people where they are. So don't educate them. To educate is a crime. This is the way many people think. And as a consequence of all that, we have no education at all. And where there is no education, there is no leadership. Because leadership is about educating people. Leadership is about immixing yourself in the life of others. It's not about respecting the others. It's about entering in the life of the others in order to serve them. But you have first to enter in their lives. Michelin entered the life of Marius. He could have said, okay, let that guy in the printing department. He was not satisfied with this. He get absolutely involved in the life of Marius because he thought he could do something incredible with Marius. And in fact, he did it. So you see, speaking about leadership, we come to speak about very, very different things. The culture in which we live is a culture that absolutely goes against this vision of leadership. It is a culture of manipulation, not a culture of leadership. So in this story of Michelin, we have a vision, at least of what leadership could be. Leadership is about bringing out greatness in people, achieving greatness, because you achieve yourself greatness by bringing out the greatness in people. And you can tell me, well, this is incredible, because in the end of the day, the day you die, just think about yourself on your wheelchair in a few years, just dying. What are you going to remember? What's going to be important for you? The towers you've built, making a big money, making a big business, the empires that you've built around yourself, you will probably not think about this because you know you're not an idiot. You know this will have no impact on your future. So we are not idiots here. We are serious people. We are not children. The only thing we'll think about is the people that have been on our path during our lives, friends, children, employees, colleagues, people that because of us have known a transformational process and have become better people, and many of them have become real leaders, real movers and shakers of the history of humanity because of our presence around them. And this is, in the end of the day, what leadership is about. And this is what gives us a lot of joy the day we die. It is this vision that greatness is only spiritual. Material greatness is nothing, because it dies out. But spiritual greatness is for always. Transformation of human beings for the good is something that gives you a lot of joy, because this is for always. So when we speak about greatness, we speak about human beings. Edouard Michelin achieved incredible business results. Incredible. But he was not worried about the business results. He was fundamentally worried about the people. And it is because he was worried about the people, because he had a leadership mentality, that his company achieved incredible material management results. You will see all the stories we're going to speak about. Those people, the French, the Americans, leaders we're going to speak about, have achieved incredible management results. Extraordinary results, things you could not expect. And the reason for that is because of their leadership. So leadership is not against management. Leadership is that which gives management an incredible dimension. That makes management something extraordinary. Because as Michelin was used to say, in the end of the day, in an organization, what achieves, what makes success possible, fundamentally, it is not the money, it is not the machinery, it's the people. And in the story with Marius, it's so obvious, so clear. It's because of the Radial Tire that this company in a few years became the number one in the tire industry in the world. That's the story of one guy that transformed the whole company and made it what it is now. So remember one thing, with this focus on leadership, on people, we are not denying the necessity of management. We're just saying it is common sense to take care of people. It is common sense to practice virtuous leadership. And it is also common sense from the point of view of management, because the history of humanity shows us that those that have practiced leadership in their organization have also achieved incredible results in terms of management. So the thing is not leadership or management. The thing is you need to have both. You need to have both. And if you want an extraordinary management, you better have an extraordinary leadership. If not, you will not produce those incredible people that are around you who don't know that they are incredible. You will not free talents. You will not free creativity. And then you will not achieve those beautiful results that you could achieve if you would have done this. So remember one thing. When people tell you, and I've seen a lot of people telling me, Alex, it doesn't work what you speak about. You're speaking about the human factor, the human beings. In management, we have realities, we have goals, we have to achieve those goals, we cannot go to bankruptcy. So from time to time, we have to treat people badly in order to get those results. And I think those people who speak that way, they are very not sincere with themselves. They are what we call rationalizing, which means they justify their own behavior in a way or another. They try to find logic to their own behavior where there is no logic at all. They have decided that they cannot and they must not practice leadership because it's too demanding for them. So then they tell you, your leadership doesn't work. But in the deepest of their heart, what they want to tell you is not that it doesn't work. It's that they don't want to practice it because it doesn't fit their values. It doesn't fit their vision of the human being. For them, human beings are instruments. The bottom line. They have no special dignity. What's important is just the money we do. The money we produce doing things. But they are not sincere with you. They are not sincere with themselves. That's why they will repeat all the time, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because they don't want that it works. That's the thing. Because if it works, it shows that they're wrong. So they have to change totally their vision of the human being and of things. It shows that they were just mistaken. But to these people, what do? I mention 4 names. And what about Michelin? What about Darwin Smith at Kimberly Clark? What about Herb Kelleher at Southwest Alliance? What about those people? Wow, they were extraordinary people. They begin to rebuild the story. They begin to justify themselves, saying that these are extraordinary cases, extraordinary stories. These are not extraordinary stories. These are just normal business stories. We just speak about them because these people made a lot of money. That's the story. We don't know if those people were greater than others, but we just know one thing. We know these people. That's the story. The story that we know these people because the business media have been writing about them. But on Earth, there are probably millions of people that are greater than Darwin Smith, than Edouard Michelin or Herb Kelleher. I think my mother was bigger than them. And nobody has written ever about my mother. It's not a scoop. It's not interesting for the business media to write about the mother of Alexander Havard. But we speak about those people because they have achieved material results. And then we understand they are talented people. Then let's try to understand who they were. And we begin to investigate their leadership and we come to certain conclusions. So it works. Of course it works. Everybody will tell you it works because it is common sense. It is common sense to deal with human beings, to think about human beings, to think that human beings are the priority. And because of this common sense, you can also achieve beautiful, magnificent management results. Common sense. One thing here is very important. It's the motivation. Remember always one thing. You are not practicing leadership in order to achieve management results. Very important, the motivation. Especially in America. It's important to speak about this. Because Americans, we have a tendency to be directed towards the goal and a tendency to instrumentalize even the great things. Because you are in a very practical culture. Your culture is very practical. And this is what people like in America. You do things. But there is an opposite side, which is a temptation to look for effectiveness or effectivity. And thinking that for that we can utilize even the greatest, the most beautiful human things. Remember one thing. You are not practicing leadership in order to achieve management. You practice leadership because it is the thing that has to be done, because you are a human being. You are a human being, and there are human principles, and you're so Christian. It's a part of your being. You are not trying to practice leadership because you want to achieve through that incredible management results. Management results are just one of the manifold consequences of your attitude towards leadership. But don't tell people that would be absolutely wrong. For a Christian point of view, it would be a disaster. It would be just instrumentalization of human beings. Even instrumentalization of what's the greatest things on earth, the human soul, the human dignity. I treat people with love because it pays off. Sounds crazy. And many people will tell you this. In their writings, you see this. It's about be ethical because it pays off. Love people because it pays off. What do you want? You want money. And you look for ways to have money. And one of those ways is to love people. That's why you try to love them. Ridiculous. Absurd. That's the way many people think. Just think of the title of that book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm not criticizing Stephen Covey, which I think is a great book. It's a very important book in the history of self-improvement. But the title itself, an ancient Greek would have cried the whole night. The whole night. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Virtues for Efficiency. Greek people who have committed suicide, thinking this is the end of civilization. Because they understood a very simple thing. Virtue, you have to look it for itself. It is an end in itself. Virtue, it's sharing in truth, beauty, in goodness. You have to have a desire for it for what it is, not for what it gives you. The efficiency of virtue, it's true, it has an efficiency. Virtue in Latin is virtus, which means the power, energy. This efficiency is just a result, one of the manifold consequences of the practice of virtue. But it is not the reason why you practice virtue. You don't practice virtue in order to be an efficient person. You practice virtue in order to achieve truth, goodness, and beauty in your life. Virtue is a participation in God's truth, beauty, and goodness. That's why you want natural virtue. It makes you closer to God. And for those who didn't believe in a personal God, those even understood that it brings them closer to God. They didn't know it was personal, but they believe in a certain God. Plato, Aristotle believe in a certain God, especially Plato. But they didn't know he was a personal being. But they had a vision of what virtue was about. It's about the good that has a transcendental dimension. So don't utilize, don't instrumentalize at the level of your intention the good things, the great things we're speaking about these days. And remind this to people. What do you want in the end of the day? Do you want virtue for itself? Because the virtue is self-realization, self-achievement. It's about being a true human being and not a fake. It's about discovering joy in your life. It's about feeling that you are fulfilling your human nature. Or you want virtue in order to get something else. You follow me? The intention. The intention. What do you want? And those people who focus on those great things because they are great things and common sense tell them to focus upon those things, they're right. They do the right thing. They do what the common sense tells them. And this common sense brings a lot of great things, also in terms of business, because it's natural. It's not artificial, it's just natural, common. And human beings blossom in this atmosphere. They feel happy, they feel themselves. So everything is common, everything is common sense, everything is in human nature. And people say, well, in this atmosphere, then I can find self-realization and I can be a creative spirit. And I become really a creative person. And this is my contribution to the organization and to my country and to the whole world. This is what I wanted to tell you in this first session. But Carol here is telling me that we have to make a break.